much more than just an image editing program. It's also one of the best paint programs that you'll ever use. When you combine the selection tools we learned about in the last lesson with the paint tools, changing and editing colors becomes super easy. So it's only natural that when you think about painting, you think about a paintbrush. That's why it seems only fitting that we start out this lesson by teaching you how to use the brush tool. The brush tool is located over here in the toolbox, and it allows you to paint just as you would when using a paintbrush. As with all the other tools, use the options bar to set the brush stroke size and other preferences before you start painting. So this is the options bar for the brush tool. First, set your brush size. And then you'll determine the mode you want to use. The mode you choose will affect how your colors appear. And modes are essentially brush types. Experiment with these to become familiar with the different brushes that you can use. Next, you'll set the opacity, or the transparency. A higher value will be darker than a lighter value. The flow sets the rate the color is applied as you move your mouse over the area. The color used with the brush will be the foreground color that you have set. You can find your foreground and background colors in the toolbox. The top color is the foreground color, and the bottom color is the background color. To paint, you'll simply drag your mouse over the area of the image that you want to paint. And remember that you can make selections and then use the paintbrush to paint single aspects of an image. So for example, if we decided that we wanted the petals on this flower to be darker, we can use one of our selection tools to select an area. And then we can use the paintbrush tool to paint only that area. And then I'll paint that a darker color. Now let's talk about the pencil tool. The pencil tool is grouped with the brush tool. If you don't see the pencil tool in your toolbox, right-click on the downward arrow beside the brush tool, and that allows you to select the pencil tool. Before you draw with the pencil tool, make sure to set your preferences in the options bar, and you'll notice that the options bar for the pencil tool is the same as for the brush tool. The only difference is that you can set auto erase. Auto erase paints the background color of areas that contain the foreground color. You will need to select the foreground color that you want to erase as well as the background color that you want to change it to. The eraser tool changes the pixels that you erase either to transparent or to the background color. You can use the eraser tool to change to a previous state in the history panel or just to erase areas of an image by specifying your preferences in the options bar. As with the previous tools, you'll set your brush size as well as the mode that you want to use, and you can choose from brush, pencil, or block. Opacity sets the transparency. Flow determines how quick the eraser will erase aspects of the image that you move your mouse over. And the airbrush tool allows you to use the eraser as if it were an airbrush. You should check Erase to History if you want to erase and restore to a previous state. So just to show you the difference opacity can make, here's a selection if we erase this petal on 100% opacity. It changes it completely to our background color. However, we can also bring our opacity down to 50%, and you can see that it does not completely erase the image. We're still left with a little bit of our original color. Now the background eraser tool is grouped with the eraser tool, and this erases background pixels and makes them transparent as you drag your mouse. So let's look at setting our options in the options bar for the background eraser tool. First thing we do, like always, is to set our brush size. Next, you'll choose the sampling method. If you choose contiguous, it samples colors continuously as you drag. Sample once erases the first color that you click, and background swatch erases only areas that contain the background color that you have set. The sampling method that you choose will determine what colors are erased, and we're going to go ahead and choose contiguous. Choose a limits mode for erasing. Discontiguous will erase the sampled color wherever it occurs under the brush. Contiguous will erase areas of the sampled color that are connected together. Find edges will also erase the connected areas that contain the sampled color, but it will also preserve the sharpness of the edges. And here you'll set your tolerance. You can enter a value or drag the slider. A low level means that areas that are very similar to the sample color will be erased. A high level will erase a broader range of colors. If you select Protect Foreground Color, Photoshop will make sure that areas that match the foreground color in the toolbox will not be erased. So once you've got your options set, you can drag through the area that you want to erase. So I'm going to work on erasing the background. And you can also click on individual aspects of the background to erase the colors. So I've erased a portion of the background here. It's a little bit messy, but that'll work for our purposes for now. Now we're going to talk about the Swatches panel. The Swatches panel is grouped over here with the Colors panel. And if you don't see it there, you can also access it by going to Window, Swatches, and make sure that's checked. It contains all the basic colors that you can use in your Photoshop images. And again, these are the colors that you can use while using Photoshop. The Swatches panel looks like this. And if you're only working with specific colors for an image, you can add or delete from the Swatches panel anytime you want. To add a new color, simply make the color you want your foreground color. I'm going to choose the color of one of these petals here. And then simply click Add to Swatches. You can name your swatch. Click OK. And it automatically adds it for you, as well as keeping the window open in case you want to pick a new color and add that to your swatch too. And it will do that as many times as you need. Now if you decide you want to delete a color, you simply click on the color, a hand will appear, and you drag that to your trash can and it will delete that automatically. Now we'll talk a little bit about creating and using gradients. A gradient is defined as a blending of shades from light to dark or from one color to another instead of just a solid color. In that respect, a rainbow could be considered a gradient. To create a gradient, first you need to click on the Gradient tool in the toolbox, and it's grouped with the Paint Bucket tool. Now you'll go up to the Options bar, and you'll click inside the Gradient sample box. The gradient editor will then be displayed, and this will show you all the different preset types of gradients that you can choose from. But if you're not happy with the gradients that Photoshop provides, you can also create your own. If you want to base the new gradient on an existing style, select the existing gradient from the preset section, then choose Solid from the Gradient Type drop-down menu. So right here. Now it's time to define the colors of your new gradient. Click on the left color stop under the gradient bar. So that's right here. When you do this, you can see that the triangle above the stop turns black. This indicates that the starting point is being edited. So select the color you want by choosing a color from the stop section. You can choose the foreground, the background, or a user color by clicking, and you can select your new color here. Next, you'll define the ending color by clicking the right color stop under the gradient bar. And since we've got a rainbow color, we have all the colors in between that we can choose, but I'm going to leave them as is. Some additional tips for choosing gradients is you can adjust the starting or ending point by dragging the corresponding stop to the location that you want. Or to adjust the midpoint, drag the diamond that appears below the gradient bar to the left or right. If you want to add more colors, just click the gradient bar in the place where you want to add another color. So for example, right here. And this will add another color stop. You can control how gradual the transitions are between bands of color in the gradient by changing the value in the smoothness box. When you're finished, enter a new name for the gradient if you want to save it as a preset. And then click New after you finish creating your gradient. As you can see, our new gradient appears here. Now that we've got our gradient set, let's figure out how to apply it to our image. I'm going to create a new layer underneath the image that we already have. To fill an area with a gradient, you drag the image. Where you start to drag and where you finish the drag will affect how the gradient appears. When you drag, a line will appear, like shown here. So we've got our line going across the screen here. When you release the mouse, the line vanishes and your gradient appears. Now if you decide you don't want the whole image to be a gradient, but just a part of it, you can select an area using the rectangular marquee tool, as we've done here. Then you'll select the gradient tool again, and choose your gradient in the options bar. I'll stick with the new one that we created. Choose an option for applying the gradient fill. There's different styles here. Linear gradients have shades that go from starting point to ending point in a straight line. Radial gradients go from starting point to the ending point in a circular pattern. Angle gradients have shades that go in a counterclockwise sweep around the starting point. Reflected gradients have shades that use symmetric linear gradients on both sides of the starting point. And a diamond gradient has shades that start from the starting point and go outward in a diamond pattern. The end point becomes one corner of the diamond. So I'll stick with the diamond one. Next in the options bar, specify a blending mode and opacity for the paint colors that you use. If you want to reverse the order the colors appear in the gradient fill, click reverse. And if you want a smoother blend and less banding of colors, select dither. If you want to use a transparency mask for the fill, select transparency. Now you can position the mouse over the spot in the image where you want the starting point for the gradient to be, and then drag it to the ending point as shown here. Release, and your gradient appears in the area that you selected.